Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming along today. I'm Joyce, the Partnerships Manager for Southwest and Wales. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Lauren, who is our Senior Partnerships Manager. Do you want to say hi to everyone, Lauren?
Yep, just good afternoon, welcome. Hi.
She will be speaking later after me. We are going to be talking about who governors for schools are, what school governance involves, and why you like to get involved, and of course, how you can sign up. We'll also have two guest speakers from OBU joining us today who will be sharing their experiences as school governors. We'll also be a Q&A at the end, so please put any questions you have for this in the chat. I will come to the most common questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Cool. So who are we? We've been working in England for over 20 years to improve education through effective governance, and we launched our service in Wales in November 2020. And we know that having talented and committed volunteers active in board roles can transform a school. And we work with schools to understand what they need, with schools registering their board vacancies with us for free. And when schools register their vacancies with us, they'll let us know if there's any specific skills they're looking for, and we'll then work with our volunteers to find the best match and make introductions. During your time with us, we provide ongoing support so that you can develop your skills in the role and have the knowledge to succeed from the very, very start. We aim not to find volunteers with the right skills, but to ensure the boards are representative of the wider community, and we're successful in engaging with a broad range of people. So now over to Claudia to talk a little bit about the partnerships.
Oh, hi everyone, my name is Claudia Lusardi and I am an Outreach Project Manager at Oxford Brookes University for Study Hire. I became a governor about a year ago, and at the time that I was recruited, the secondary school that I'm a governor for were recruiting for a range of vacancies in their governing board. And at the time I was quite struck by the skills that the school were looking for and they needed. So that included things like somebody who could understand data, somebody who knew anything about estates and building. They also had gaps in their sixth form governing board, and they still do. And that was more of a general skill base. It's such a key transition point, sixth form, for progressing on to higher education. And it made me realise and think at the time that I know that all of those skills exist within Oxford Brookes University. I know that there's people across the whole HEI who could bring a range of expertise to primary and secondary schools across the country. So that started really the partnership or the development of the partnership with Governors for Schools. In addition to that, I feel for myself that there's been a lot of professional development, a crossover in things that I found useful in my day-to-day job. That includes things like having strategic leadership experience and being involved in quite a high level. So rather than maybe operational day-to-day, for example, what the teachers do, it's been quite interesting to have experience at a different level of management. It's quite obvious in many ways how it is part of a social responsibility, but there's such a gap and sort of recruitment need for governors across England, and it's a really nice way to give back to the local community. Linked to that, Oxford Brookes University has a really supportive volunteering policy. So if you are a staff member at Oxford Brookes, I'll put the link in the chat. You get 1 day paid leave to do volunteering, and you can split that down into hours. So in the past, I've used my volunteering leave to go on school visits as part of my governing responsibilities. So I've taken off 2.5 hours in the morning and been able to go and do a school visit to look at different aspects. And in general, I know we've got lots of alumni in the room as well, virtual room, I mean. I'm in a local Abingdon secondary school, but there's vacancies across England. So it doesn't matter where you're based, where you live, there'll be a school near you that could really use your expertise. And all of the above in terms of professional development and social responsibility, it all applies whether you're a staff member or an alumni. So I think there's quite a lot that you can gain from the role, but I might be a little bit biased, of course.
Fab, thank you so much for sharing. So I guess the first question to tackle is, what is a school governor? And Claudia actually mentioned a little bit that this role is strategic rather than operational. Governors don't need to get involved with the day-to-day running of the school. Instead, they work at the board level to support and challenge the school's leadership team to drive school improvement. A governor is passionate about improving opportunities for all young people. And to do this, they volunteer their time, skills, and experience to impact the effectiveness of the school they support. Anyone can be a school governor, basically, as long as you're above 18. But if you have the following thoughts or passions, we'll really encourage you to be one. So if you care about education that children receive and want to drive school improvement, if you want to make an important contribution to your local community, if you enjoy a challenging and rewarding role that helps you grow professionally, if you are keen to help all children to do better at school now and in the future, if you want to bring what you've learned in your professional life onto the board to best support the school, you are in the right place. As you can read on the slide, we need someone who has the time to commit to the role, who can be a critical friend to the head teacher, who is objective, has accountability, provides and applies their specialist knowledge to the role, while also being a champion of the school. And one thing that we want to emphasize that you do not need to come from a specific background or discipline. We welcome people from all walks of life. We have so many vacancies, but so few volunteers, and that's why we need you. The pie chart here shows that most of the vacancies are in the primary phase of education, based on the fact that most schools are primary schools. With this in mind, we really encourage you to consider being as open as possible when thinking about the type of school you'd like to support. So now, Lauren, yeah. So now we have our guest speaker, Helen, from the university, to talk a little bit more about her experiences. Helen, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Some of you looking at the list know me, but so I'm UK Recruitment and Admissions Director here at Oxford Brookes. And I've been at Brookes for 9 years in a couple of different roles. And I became a school governor of a primary school in summer last year. So I still feel quite new to it. I became a parent governor. So for me, a big part of this was a personal motivation to play a role in my children's school. I look in awe at the people that organise things like the summer fete and Christmas party. I'm not sure that's my skill set. So this felt like a good way that I could use my skills and my time realistically to support the school. So for me, in terms of what I've kind of got out of it so far, firstly, I would say there is a bit of a time commitment to it, and I think it's worth thinking a little bit about that. But actually, it's not, I haven't found it to be particularly intensive. Sorry for that background noise. So it's something, particularly around a governor, it's all planned really far in advance. You can see all the meetings a year ahead. The papers are already organised and things like that. So actually it's been something that with a bit of organisation is quite easy to fit into life. The things I've enjoyed learning more about how the school operates, why it does what it does. So particularly as a parent, understanding some of the decisions that the school makes. It's been interesting but concerning to hear and understand a bit more about the reality of the financial situation that schools are under, not just the school where I'm a governor, and definitely the sort of pressures and creative thinking that's going on in most of our schools to try and do the best by the children in those schools, given the financial situation. And I've really enjoyed using my experience to support the school. I think particularly in a primary setting, I've learned that the job of a primary head teacher is a incredible one, and the level, so to give an example, within a few weeks of becoming a governor, our head teacher was offered a secondment opportunity. And so my first governor's meeting was all about the process we might go through, how we might cover that role. And so I was able to bring in my experiences of kind of HR processes and, thinking about our employers' policies, etc., and thinking like that, and bring that together with some advice we'd had from the local authority, because ultimately for a primary school kind of leadership team to have that knowledge and expertise, that was a really, I think, good way to show the way that the governors contributed their external knowledge and support. I think there's definitely been benefits to me in terms of my job, although that, as I've said, that's not my primary motivation in this case. So part of my remit is around how we support widening access to higher education. We know that generally those gaps tend to start at early years. So although I'm in a primary setting, even though my work and my teams is mainly around secondary, I've got a much better understanding of how those challenges and issues and barriers to education present themselves and how schools are trying to tackle them, particularly the ongoing impact of COVID and how that's showing up. And I've definitely had exposure to different types of data, which Claudia mentioned, different bits of education policy, and reinforcing kind of stuff I know and use, but around safeguarding, but thinking about that from a different perspective. I think I also just wanted to say that in my job, I think there's a really important role around encouraging university staff to become school governors. The Office for Students cite this as a way in which universities can support schools and attainment in schools. Although the governor role isn't to kind of go in and talk about your job, it's about providing that assurance and challenge and support to the school. Definitely, I feel that you become a kind of indirect contact. You're there in the school, you can challenge perceptions about the organisation you work at. You become someone who can be known to staff and they can reach out to you for opportunities. And I don't think that's just because of my job. I think that anyone who works at a university, you will have your own kind of skills and knowledge and understanding of the organisation. And schools are really, really keen to build on their wider community and use those to the advantage and in support of their children. So for me, it's something, having a network of colleagues who are governors in schools could be a really important part of how Brookes has an impact in our community. So I'd be really interested in getting to know other colleagues who are governors. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's really valuable. We have our second guest speaker at Yemi. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Adeyemi Ladijobi, and I studied at Oxford Brookes University many years ago. I'm a senior business analyst in my current role, and I've been a school governor for a couple of years now in a primary school down south in England. The reason why I decided to be a school governor is because of my commitment to education and to give back to the society and the younger ones coming up to help them shape their future. And it was more of like my commitment to community development. What do I enjoy about being a school governor? I would say is being part of the educational process, collaborating with other governors, collaborating with the head teacher, and using that as an opportunity to witness positive changes that the decisions we'll make would have an impact on positive changes within the school. What have I gained since being there? Like what one of the previous speakers said earlier, it's helped me in my current job to be more strategic in nature. So not just focus on what I'm doing today or what we're doing this year, but as a governor, we tend to focus on, okay, what's the budget for 2023, 2024? This year, we'll be looking at what's the budget for 2024, 2025. Do we have enough money? Do we need to go back to the local authority? Do we need to get a supplementary budget? It gives us insights into things like education policy, financial management. Our leadership skills get tested. We're not expected to rubber stamp every single thing that comes, but to challenge the status quo respectfully and to look at things from a different perspective. So we may be given two options, and one of us could come up with a third option. Why don't you combine option 1 or 2, or look at it from a completely different lens? And it helped me to also have a deeper understanding of the challenges that schools face. So some of the policies that I talked about earlier that I have been involved in, things like getting involved with reviewing safe school environmental policies, safer recruitment policies, reviewing urgent health and safety / safeguarding items, things like replacing fire doors, school gates, fitting of intercoms to prevent unauthorized access, and like I mentioned earlier, budget planning for the day. So it's a good role. All in all, you're probably looking at about 6 meetings, maybe 7 meetings a year in total. And like one of the previous speakers spoke about earlier, you will be given the ample time to review the documents ahead of the meeting, and you can fit it within your personal life. So what are you waiting for? Go for it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adeyemi, and thank you, Helen, as well. It's great to hear about the sort of variety of things that you've been able to get involved with through the role, and yeah, the impact that you've been able to have as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the governor responsibilities. I think if you're on the call today, you probably want to understand what it's all about, and we've definitely heard from our speakers a little bit there as well. As we've heard, school governors enable their school to run effectively and provide excellent education for children. That's the aim of a board. They have 3 kind of core responsibilities. So that's planning the strategic direction of the school, so that there's sort of a clear vision in line with the school's ethos. Overseeing the financial management of the school and ensuring that its money is well spent and appropriately accounted for. And then thirdly, sort of holding senior leaders to account for the educational performance of the school and the outcomes of the pupils. So we'll just go into a little more detail on those sort of 3 aspects. As a governor, you will play a key role in setting the vision for the school and helping the head and the senior leadership team to think about how that's going to build into all areas of school life. So is the vision ambitious for every child? And then what is actually in place to make that vision a reality? If the school has a clear vision, it can be a blueprint for the school's success and the success of the children within it. So you'll be thinking about how children, staff and families are engaged and consulted, and making sure that the vision is clear and embedded across the school community. You'll also be involved in areas such as policy development and agreeing the school development plan. Now, all of these areas that requires people from a range of backgrounds and with a range of skills and experiences kind of sat around that table to ensure that the best decisions are made, that the most robust decision making is happening. So please don't think that you have to have a specific skill set. I think as Joyce said earlier, it's really about having actually a range of people sat around the table that the best decisions are made. Look into financial management. Governors don't necessarily set the budget for the school, but they must oversee it and ensure that it's spent in line with that strategic vision that we were just talking about a moment ago. The level of responsibility might differ between boards. For example, a single school within a large multi-academy trust may have less responsibility than a school that's managed by the local education authority. Nevertheless, I think something that all governors need to sort of have in mind is the breadth of competing needs for a budget. If we think that schools usually spend around 75% of their budget on staffing, that leaves a fairly small pot of money to deal with everything else that a school needs to provide. So it is really important that the governing board kind of thinks about all those competing needs. Again, you don't have to be an expert in finance. That's the point of having a mix of skills across the board. It might be that you learn some skills and you contribute others as you go along. I've heard of many governors who didn't previously have experience of finance, and they've ended up sitting on the finance committee on their governing body. And that's really because they were able to ask effective questions that help the school to think effectively about budgeting and financial management, even though they themselves were not financial experts. But if you are an expert, if you are an accountant, you're definitely still welcome, as well, as that is a skill that the school is likely to need. Then looking at kind of creating robust accountability. As a governor, part of your role is to monitor and evaluate, and to be effective in that, you need to be able to kind of ask questions, effective questions, and to be aware of all the information that's available. So that might be looking at data sets, for example. Being able to support and challenge the head is a really key aspect of being a governor, and it is that balance of support and challenge in the right measure. One way of looking at the responsibility of accountability is to break it down into watchdog, mediator, and champion. So as a watchdog, you're there to make sure the right questions are being asked, seek evidence to back up any statements that are being made, and not just kind of accepting things on face value, but digging a little bit further and just making sure that there's robust reasoning in place for it. As a mediator, you'll be juggling the needs of a variety of stakeholders, so that's the students, the staff, parents, as well as balancing all of those things against things like balancing the budget. So yeah, definitely juggling a few different things there. You'd also be sat on a board, hopefully with people from a variety of backgrounds, and for a board to be effective, it needs to kind of bring a variety of different opinions together as well. So there's that element to the mediator role as well. And lastly, but definitely not least, it's vital to be a champion. You need to be able to kind of recognise and celebrate the successes of the school, and kind of shout about it, celebrate it. And I think for many people who volunteer as a governor, this is one of the aspects of the role that is particularly rewarding. Being passionate about the school and what is a really satisfying part of the role. So at Governors for Schools, we do support people into governor roles. We can also support people into trustee roles as well. So I'll just really briefly talk about sort of the difference there. In terms of governance structure terms, trustees sit at board level and are responsible for all the schools within a multi-academy trust, or within an academy trust. That's compared to governors who are responsible, sit at board level, but for an individual school. There can be anything from one school to more than 40 schools within an academy trust. So as you can imagine, budgets vary according to size. But generally speaking, there is sort of an additional element of financial management to the role of trustee, because often the budget size is much larger because it's many schools as opposed to just one in most cases. It is important to note that the trustee role is a dual role. So as well as being a trustee of the trust, individuals also operate as a director of a company, meaning that they're listed on Companies House and are therefore subject to company law, whereas that is not the case for a governor. Beyond this sort of important distinction, however, the trustee role is in many ways, broadly speaking, similar to the role of a governor, in that it is a sort of strategic, eyes-on, hands-off role, still being a critical friend, providing challenge. But the difference is you're providing challenge to the executive of the trust, rather than to kind of an individual head teacher of a single school. But yeah, you're still kind of holding that executive to account for its decision making. The time commitment is roughly the same, we find, in terms of the volunteers we work with, so approximately 4 to 8 hours per month. And it's still a voluntary role, although some trusts might offer expenses. And like with the governor matching process at Governors for Schools that Joyce mentioned earlier, we also strive to meet your preferences when matching with the school. So you let us know what you're looking for, and then we'll do our best to find something that matches your preferences when looking for an opportunity for you. I think another thing that in the feedback, I think understanding what the commitment of the role is really important. So in terms of time per month, we've kind of got lots of surveys, lots of feedback from our volunteers to try and understand how much time it takes up. And they've told us that it takes an average of 5 to 7 hours per month. Now, of course, this is an average, so that might not be everybody's experience, but it is a ballpark figure to sort of have in mind if you're trying to think about, do I have the time to fully commit to this important role? Obviously, if you take on additional roles such as chair, that would be likely to take on more time. But generally speaking, most boards are kind of meeting once per half term or so. You might sit on a committee that meets in addition to that as well, or two. And you'd also need to factor in time for preparing for meetings, visiting the schools, and reporting back on your findings to go into school celebration events. But the figure of 5 to 7 hours does sort of encapsulate all of that according to our volunteers that we've surveyed, and it is a lot of them. So hopefully we're not too far off with that. What I would say as well, in my experience of speaking to governors, those who are able to kind of put a lot in and really commit are the ones that really get a lot from it as well. So it is, it's great if you can really, really commit to the role. The term of office is usually 4 years, so it's best to consider this as a long-term role. And I actually think this is one of the benefits of the role, because you can really get to know the school. You can really get to understand the school's needs, strengths, challenges, but you can also gain a lot from the role because it is long-term as well. Obviously, as a volunteer, your circumstances might change, and that is fine. You can resign before the end of your term of office. But what we would just ask is that you go into it fully intending to, see out the full term of office. But things can happen in life, and we understand things can change. That being said, a lot of people do put themselves forward for a second or even a third term, and that is always an option as well. Just something to have in mind is some schools will consider associate governors that kind of involved, they don't have voting rights, but they're involved in a specific project for a short period of time. That is an option as well. So do kind of let us know if that's the case, get in touch with us, but they don't come up very often, we find, at governors. Travel, when you apply, you can tell us how far it would be practical to travel to a school. So the larger the area we can search for vacancies, obviously the quicker it's going to be for us to find you a vacancy. That being said, do be realistic about what you can reasonably commit to in terms of how far you're willing to travel. But just bear in mind that if you're looking for a secondary school within 10 minutes of your house, that's probably going to be one school, and it's going to take us a lot longer than if you say, yeah, I'm happy to travel up to 20 minutes, 30 minutes to a primary or a secondary in my area. And really briefly, just to talk about liability, when you join the governing board, you're sort of seen as a collective entity that supports the school. So any decisions that you provide, you're seen as a collective. So there's sort of shared liability. So what that means is if the board was found to be not supporting the school in a sufficient manner, then the whole board would be, dismissed. You're no longer governors of that school, and they'd be found sort of jointly liable for the failure. There can sometimes be misconceptions around personal liability, and people worry about that. But the only way a governor could be found personally liable is if they were found to have acted criminally, for example, kind of negligently or fraudulently. So generally, our advice is that as long as you're acting genuinely and with honest intentions or motives, in the best interest of the school, then there's nothing to worry about in terms of liability. In terms of financial losses or debt from poor financial oversight, then the school usually will have insurance in place to cover that money. So as the governor, you're not going to be personally liable for the debts of the school, which I'm sure is a relief to everybody on the call. If this is something that's of particular interest to you, we do have an FAQ on our website about liability if you wanted to dig into it a little bit further. And then it's back over to Joy.
Yes, benefits. You will reap lots of benefits, and we actually have been mentioning all the different benefits. You will grow your transferable skills from the wealth of opportunities that being a school governor can offer, benefiting you both professionally and personally. You will have the opportunity to grow experience across a range of skills that you may not otherwise be exposed in your normal role. Our professional development research found that by undertaking a governor role, confidence increased, performance was enhanced in the workplace, and there was reported growth in preparation, flexibility, and agility, analyzing performance data and KPIs, financial skills, and value for money. So lots of good stuff. Every person in this virtual room has a unique skill set to offer. So wherever your skills lie, there will be a school that needs you, sometimes quite desperately as well. During your term, you will have an impact on the education of hundreds, if not thousands, of children. Those children can have a better experience of learning, higher aspirations, and improved life chances because of your impact as part of the board. So we definitely want you to, be on this journey. Next slide, please. Yes. So at Governance for School, we do more than just placing you in a school. We want you to be effective in your role as quickly as possible. Therefore, we have a range of free learning modules on a number of topics to introduce you to some of the key elements of the role. We also hold regular webinars so that you can continue learning and have the opportunity to ask our governance experts questions. And once placed at a school, you'll be given 12 months free access to online governance resource and knowledge from Governor Hub Knowledge. And in England, our new governors will be able to have access to free training opportunities through their local authority or the trust that they work with, which will be organized through the school. Lauren?
I think it's back over to me. Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself for a moment there. So yeah, back over to me, and really it's on to next steps. So it's actually back over to you. It's just a case of hopefully this has piqued your interest and it's something that you think you might want to do. Then you just need to visit our website to complete your kind of online profile. So that's where you kind of let us know what skills and experience you have. You can let us know what kind of school preferences you have, any travel preferences, and then there's also a personal statement that demonstrates your passion and commitment to improving, information on why you want to become a governor. Hopefully, your commitment to improving educational standards through governance. This is something that when after we've matched and after you've said yes, I'm interested in the school, we're then going to share that with the school. So it is sort of the first impression of you that a school would receive. Once you've submitted your application, it's definitely worth checking out our induction e-learning too. We also have one that's probably also suitable for if you're still deciding and you want to know a little bit more about the role. And we have, as Joyce mentioned, we have a webinar library and lots of other resources such as key abbreviations, acronyms, that sort of thing, that you can kind of get stuck into whilst we kind of work away in the background to try and find a role for you. As opportunities arise, you'll sort of have a key contact at Governors for Schools, and as those opportunities arise, your key contact will share them with you for you to consider if it's a school or an opportunity that you're interested in. If it is, great, let us know and we'll share your application with the school and get the ball rolling. If it's not, that's also fine. You can just let us know and just let us know why that wasn't of interest, and then we can use that to sort of refine our search next time. Each school has a slightly different recruitment process from that point onwards, but the main thing to know is that we're on hand throughout just to make sure things are moving along nicely. Again, if things have any questions along the way, you're always welcome to seek support from us. The recruitment process might involve sort of an initial chat about the role with the school, meeting with the head teacher or the chair, or it can sometimes involve an interview. It really does depend on the school, but as I said, we'll be on hand, you know, to track progress and provide you with support. And then hopefully from there, we get the news that you've been appointed as a governor, and yeah, the team does get just as excited as you when that happens, and then we'll make sure you have access to that ongoing support from there on out. But yeah, the first step is filling in that online form, or getting in touch with kind of myself or Joyce if you do kind of have any more questions. We do have time now for a Q&A. So what we can do is, if you want to pop any questions in the chat or in the Q&A function, and then we will do our best to answer those. That can either be for myself and Joyce from a Governors for School perspective, but also if you wanted to ask Helen or Adeyemi or Claudia anything as well, please do pop those questions in. Okie doke. So we've got a question about residency, so I can answer that now. So you don't need to be like a citizen of the UK to become a governor. You could be here temporarily, but you do need to be resident in the UK. So you need to be currently living within the UK to become a governor. So you can't be sort of living overseas, if that makes sense. If you were here on a visa, there might be some kind of case-by-case basis things to think about. So for example, if you had any restrictions on the number of hours you could work or volunteer, you might need to take that into consideration. We can't advise on that. You kind of need to go and look at your own visa restrictions. But if you believe that your visa allows you to become allows you to volunteer for the number of hours that the role entails, and you're living in the UK, you can absolutely become a governor. We would also just ask anybody to kind of think about, what will I be here, you know, for the full term of office? And if not, but you think you've got skills that could contribute in the short term, I'd probably get you to kind of reach out to the team, and we can maybe look at whether there are any associate roles. But as I said, are a little bit more few and far between those. I have just noticed that I've got a colleague email address on the screen, so don't email Harriet, but info@Governors for Schools, or we'll make sure that we share mine and Joyce's email addresses in the follow-up as well. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll give it another minute. I'll also just say, Adeyemi, Helen, Claudia, if any of you want to jump in and say anything, otherwise we'll probably finish just a couple of minutes early.
Nothing from me, but just to say thank you everybody for taking time out of your lunch break to come and listen in. And yeah, do reach out if you have any questions. I'd be happy to talk about my governing role with anybody as well.
That's great, Claudia. Yeah, I think hearing from Claudia and Helen, you've got colleagues within the university that you can go and speak to about the governor role, which is fantastic. If you wanted to find out a little bit more from their sort of personal experience before committing. Okie doke. All right. Well, in that case, we can all have 5 minutes back of our lunch breaks today. Thank you to our speakers, to my colleague Joyce, and to all of you for joining this afternoon. Yeah, and it'd be wonderful to see some applications come in over the coming days, weeks, and months. Thank you all.